Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for an exciting and special session by Dr. Skand Bali, Principal, the Hyderabad Public School, Begumpet. Thank you so much, Dr. Bali, for being present here. Now, I would request you to please come over the stage.
A very good evening to all of you. Indeed a pleasure to be amongst all of you. I'm just one of you, an educator. I'm not here to preach or talk about anything, but here to talk about something which is very close to my heart, that is equity and inclusivity, something which a lot many times is misunderstood as well. May I please have the presentation on? On the word equity in the name of either inclusion or in the name of equality. We feel that equality means we are doing everything possible. No, we might have brought children on wheelchair into our schools. We might have brought children with some kind of autistic qualities or characteristics. We might have brought in children into our school education who are hearing impaired or having learning difficulty, learning disability. We might have brought in children who belong to probably economically weaker sections. That is probably equality, that you brought them in together. Is that equity? The answer is no. Because there are certain involvements which are required to take care of them. One example, we are giving opportunity to every student of the school to play a sport, but a parent who is affluent can afford the sports gear and the sports kit, whereas a child who has come from extremely weaker section of the society, is that child allowed to play with the same gear? That is the difference between equality and equity. You may give them equal opportunities to pluck an apple from a tree, but just think how a child on the wheelchair will do that. Equity means the quality of being fair and impartial. It's much more deeper than just equality. Whereas inclusion means the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources. So both are very closely knit, but they both go hand in hand. So bringing a child into the classroom, giving the child an education into the school, giving the child equal opportunity to have an access to the education is inclusion, but making sure that the child does not feel neglected is called equity. I was watching a program long back, which used to be Aamir Khan show 𝗟𝗶𝗹𝗶𝗲. And that time I was not in Hyderabad, I was in Dehradun. And one of the series or the episode was on disability or children with different abilities. And a boy on the wheelchair was called, and the boy coincidentally was from Hyderabad. And he said on that show, he said, for the first time I got an opportunity to go and study in a university in the US. And he said that my parents were obviously worried because the child was on the wheelchair. He said, you'll not believe that I went to the US. The moment I landed at the airport, from there to his room in the hostel provided by the university, he did not feel even for once that he's on the wheelchair. That is called equity. He said in India, the problem is that a man with both the legs working, physically fit, at times finds it difficult to get onto a train or a bus. So how a person on the wheelchair would do that? So that's something mindset which we all as educators has to make sure that it comes into our system. Why equity and inclusion matters? It provides a shared experience. Nobody feels neglected. We all talk about caste, creed, religion, community, but how many of us talk about children who are struggling in the classroom in the name of we will teach everybody equal, we will give work to do at home equally in the name of equality. So that's something which we need to do. So that particular child who is in a classroom in the name of equality is actually not going through the experience which he or she needs to go through. It provides broader perspectives. When we start looking at every child individually, it gives us a completely different perspective. If we, as the head of the schools or the principals or the teachers, if we sit on a wheelchair and walk through our campus very carefully, just on a particular day, to experience how a child on the wheelchair feels in the school, we'll feel very different. I would encourage all of you to, not that I'm marketing a particular movie, but there's a movie coming called Shrikant on 13th of May. Please do go and watch it. It's about a boy from Andhra who was absolutely blind, and it's on true story and how he went on to make a company 150 crore worth despite all the struggles he faced in the education system. So given opportunities, they do exceed. So that's what we need to look at. We need to look at it from a different perspective. It nurtures a more positive environment in the community. No child, no colleague feels inferior to others in any possible way. So obviously we all as individuals, we like when we have positive around us. We like when there is empathy around us. We like when we are respected. If any of us in this hall are made to feel small in any possible way, we won't like it. Imagine the children who come under our care. They are from year 3 to probably year 18, which is formative years for them. So it does make a lot of difference. We understand society better. We understand that God has not made all of us equal. We understand that God has not given each one same strength. Somebody might be good at hearing skills, somebody might be good at observations, somebody might be good at mathematics, English, somebody might be good at sport. So are we giving those opportunities to children in our schools in the name of equality is something which we all need to understand. It adds integrity to the system. Integrity is a very, very big word. We sometimes use it in our day-to-day function, but as an educator, as a teacher, as a principal, do I have the 100% integrity? By that I mean, is my conscience giving me the correct feedback on what I am doing day to day in my organization? Is something which we all need to address as educators. And we need to put actions behind words. It's all good to say as a principal or as a teacher, sitting or going in the assembly and talking about, oh, it's working? Great. Well, that's working. Now this is not working, but that's fine. So it's very important for us to make sure that we provide opportunities and we show actions rather than our words for the community. That's okay, ma'am. It's okay. Yeah, it's working. Well, thank you. It generates fresh insights into the system. It gives us insight into an individual. It opens their hearts for us. And the difference which we make to their lives can be extremely, extremely productive and helpful. And it gains global appeal as well. The world is moving towards equity. The world is moving towards inclusiveness. And whether we like it or we don't, the West has gone far ahead than us when it comes to emotional quotient. Despite the fact that they are more materialistic than us. We, as a society, which is the eastern part of the world, was more emotional earlier, but we have somewhere lost this battle or this journey. We are far behind than the rest when it comes to equity and inclusion. Another important thing is the key principles of inclusion and equity is non-bias. Sometimes we don't realize, but we unknowingly, because of lack of awareness or because of lack of critical eye or because of lack of deep dive, we end up taking decisions via biased decisions. For example, just a small example I'm giving, organizing an event in the school on the first floor where you have only the stairs to go up, there's no lift. Unknowingly, I as a principal have taken a biased decision against those who cannot climb. right? So it's something as simple as that. So it's very important that equity and inclusion is looked into that. It's very transparent. When you talk about inclusion, when you talk about equity, it's very, very transparent. And everybody, all of us sitting in this hall, love transparency. When it comes to our increments, whether it comes to our salaries, whether it comes to our professional development, whether it comes to our feedback, we want everybody who's dealing with us to be transparent. I think it's very important that we are transparent to the world as well, because we are touching so many lives day in and day out on daily basis. It makes us accountable to what we do. That's something very important. We as principals tend to enjoy the authority, enjoy the power, but we don't want to understand that with responsibility comes accountability. And our accountability is not just to make sure that the curriculum is delivered on time, not to make sure that every child is safe, not to make sure that the results are good, but most importantly, every child and every staff member under our care needs to be happy, feel valued, and they should see something good about themselves when they come to school. I think that is something which is very, very important, and we need to make ourselves accountable for that. Empathy is the root of equity and inclusion. Without making them feel that they are from a different challenged environment, we give them all opportunities where they feel a part of it and it does work. I'll give one example of the organization which I head. So our school, in 1970s, much before the right to education came in, decided to give reservation to children who belong to certain communities which were deprived their rights for a long time in this country. Free of cost education in our school, and the seats were reserved for them. Now, when this decision was taken by the school, the government of Andhra at that particular time, and now Telangana came forward, they said, we'll pay the fee of those students to your school. Then the challenge came was that they are coming from the families where parents don't even meet 2 meals a day. Sometimes they get only 1 meal a day. How will they participate in sports events? Because schools do send teams to other schools and other states, and the school which I had, we send students to all over India and sometimes even outside India for various sports and cultural competitions. So we thought, what do we do? And then the solution which was found was, we will not charge any of our student any sport event travel equivalent to third air-conditioned train travel. We will not ask parents a single rupee for their sports attire. We will not charge a single rupee from any parent for their sports equipment. The reason was, if you charge some and you don't charge some, the ones whom you are not charging, they can be subject to unknowingly a kind of an environment or a talk which may put their self-esteem down. So these are some of the steps I'm trying to tell you that, how deep one needs to think when it talks about empathy and obviously accessibility. We have to make sure that every good experience and opportunity given to these students and staff is accessible to all of them. There are certain challenges which are like any other thing with equity and inclusion as well. First is communication issues. We don't communicate. Communication is not about I coming to the assembly, talking to the students, talking to the staff. Communication is not about me calling them and talking. Communication is about giving them equal opportunity to open up and talk. Communication is a two-way system. Communication is also that when I'm walking in the school corridor and I'm taking around, a child looks at me, gives a smile, I smile back. I make sure that I don't miss out on a single courteous wish which is extended to me. Any courteous greeting which is extended to me is responded back with the same warmth, if not more. That is what is important. So equity and inclusivity at times tend to get lost in communication issues. We tend to talk very nicely to a parent who walks in suited, booted, we understand belongs to a certain category, certain class. But when a parent walks in chappals or in a dress which may not look fancy, we tend to have a different way of communicating with them. That's a human psyche. It's not just anybody, but it's a human psychology, how you react to people. So communication issues are a bigger challenge when it comes to equity and inclusion. And most of the time when the parents or the students walk up to us for the problems they are facing, we become very aggressive at times to defend ourselves, which is again a human instinct. Any living being's instinct is to get aggressive when you feel cornered. Discrimination challenges are very, very common for equity and inclusion. There is discrimination of all sorts and all kinds. When I say discrimination, there are also very important things for us to understand in education sector is that when we talk about equity, there is a thin line which we make sure that we don't cross. There are certain dress codes of the schools, there are certain decorum of the school, there are certain rules and regulations of the school. They should not be broken in the name of equity and inclusion. Please don't get me wrong there. I'm talking about only providing experiences to the children and the staff who is working on campus with us all the time. So discrimination challenges are also there. Children are discriminated at times because either the child is a first generation learner, doesn't understand, so they are made to sit at the back. Sometimes we end up branding them. Sometimes we end up saying that the child doesn't understand, doesn't know, etc., etc. And many schools, sometimes even selection of the school teams have biases. So that's another challenge which we face. Stereotypes, prejudice. Stereotyping is like, he's like this only, he will not study. How long can we, deal with such children or such staff? These are very common questions, and I'm saying with my experience. I have no shame in saying my son is hearing impaired child, and when my wife went for his admission, he was young. Now he's, with God's grace, he's 16 years old and is coming in grade 11. So when my wife went for my son's first admission in a preschool, she came back and she cried, and I went home and I asked her, I said, what happened to you? Why are you looking so upset? She said, I went to about 10 schools, and 7 schools told me, just because of my son who's hearing issue, that we don't admit such children. So imagine a mother feeling such children means, what do you mean? And she said the other schools said that you should take your child to a special school, which is a school with sign language or whatever you may call it, right? So today I have no hesitation in saying that my son has finished his 10th CBSE. We are waiting for his result. He is a national level shooter. He's a state level horse rider. He's a world title holder in modeling. He is a painter. He's a drummer. So what I'm trying to say is that these kind of stereotyping is very common in our society. We want to judge the book before even reading it. So that's something which is very important. Distrust in the workplace is another important aspect which is a challenge for equity and inclusion. When we don't trust our colleagues, when we don't trust our students, trust comes with trust. The more you trust, the more people feel obliged to make sure that they don't break your trust. There's a conscience in each living being. For once, they will say something to you which you know is not true, but you still show that trust that you have. Believe me, after some time you will see that their approach towards telling a lie to you or telling something which is not true has completely changed. So that is something which is very, very important. So I think we all as educators need to make sure that we work on these aspects. And I will not give any strategies to you for equity, promotion, inclusion. I started with this slide. I'm ending with this slide. On the left, you see equality, which I'm sure all of us are doing. On the right, it talks about equity. Sometimes we get lost by saying, oh, if I give an extra help to this child, what will the other child feel? the picture is self-explanatory, that if you give equality, there is one who is out of place, and there is one who is way above. That person doesn't even need that stool. But if that kind of support is given to the other child, then all three are at the same level. And no individual can stop from succeeding in life provided they are given the right opportunities. We had our former President 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, studied in a state board school, studied in a regional language school, went on to become one of the top scientists in the world, went on to become the president of this country. What more can we see? There are hundreds of those kind of examples in our country. It's just a matter of opportunity. It's just a matter of equal and fair opportunities given to these children, and they will definitely flourish. With that, thank you so much, and once again, a very good evening to you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bali, for the insightful presentation. So thank you so much for being here. And to felicitate you, I would like to call on stage Ms. 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗲, co-founder and director, Invest for Edu, to felicitate Dr. Bali. Ma'am, may we have you over the stage?